was demolished and a new building built on its grounds.
Singer Patti LaBelle was rushed off stage in the middle of her show in Milwaukee Saturday night. Fox's Ted Linder with more.
The unsettling moment at the Riverside Theater unfolded after the venue was hit with a bomb threat. Video showed two men rush onto the stage and grab the mic stand from LaBelle as she was holding a bouquet of flowers and speaking to the crowd. One of the men grabbed LaBelle by the arm and forced her to drop the bouquet. Another man grabbed LaBelle's other arm, and the two of them escorted her off stage. Her band then followed close behind. Security then evacuated everyone else from the theater, and the show was postponed. The concert organizer says they'll be working with LaBelle to reschedule the show. Police say they continue to investigate the threat.
The NBA is mourning the death of former player and coach Paul Silas.
Paul Silas was a two-time NBA All-Star. He made the All-Defensive Team 5 times and was a 3-time NBA champion over 16 seasons as a player, winning 2 rings with the Boston Celtics and 1 more with the Seattle Supersonics. Silas went on to coach in the association for more than 30 seasons, 12 as head coach with stops with the Clippers, Hornets, Cavs, and Bobcats. He was LeBron James's first NBA coach in Cleveland, and his son is currently the coach of the Houston Rockets. Silas was 79 years old.
That's Fox's Tim McMaster. I'm Laura Cantor, Fox News.
Check out the newest hydro and garden center to hit Guam, Crop King Hydro. We have a huge selection of plant nutrients, soils, hydroponic mediums, organic pest control pumps, plant support, tools, and so much more. Call 635-4769. 635-GROW. Open Monday through Saturday, 10 to 6 at the Dededo Satina Mall, right across from Payless and Paradise Fitness. For whatever you grow, think Crop King Hydro. Crop King Hydro.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Is your business ready for digital transformation? The latest Wi-Fi technology is here, and it's Docomo Pacific's WorkPass, powered by Plume. WorkPass unlocks connectivity, productivity, and security tools all in the palm of your hand. Access features like adaptive Wi-Fi, guest and employee networks, evolving AI security, plus so much more. To learn more about WorkPass, visit business.docomopacific.com. Docomo Pacific Business. Work better together.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's the way I start the show, and especially on a Monday, because we got a whole week of tall tales ahead of us. It doesn't get any better than that. Jose and I just barely survive over the weekend, where we have 70 hours, 70 hours, with no tall tales.
I didn't think it was going to end.
Yeah, it just seems like it goes on forever. But finally, we make it up to 1,600 on Monday, and here we are back again. Another exciting, elucidating, educating episode of Tall Tales. And as usual, I start out with Zemi Ikatni, although I'm wondering if I should just junk it. Because the Post has not written editorials for 3 months. I guess they're on strike at the Post, like the New York Times is on strike for higher wages, acting like a bunch of capitalists over there at that liberal rag. What'll happen next? But here's the daily news for today. Our view: holidays are busy. Practice spirit of Inafa Maulik, even if you don't know what the term means. The feast of Santa Maria in Camelon is complete. The novena to the Nino Jesus is about to begin, and everywhere there are signs of the holiday rush kicking into full throttle. Store aisles are filling up as shoppers rush to check out gift lists and stock up on groceries, baking ingredients, and decorations needed to pep up the season. Let's make sure that we put shopping back into Christmas. No, wait a minute. That isn't right, is it, Jose?
Close.
Close, yeah. And while the shopping rush is but another thing to eliminate from the growing list this festive season, we must keep in mind that for many, the holidays aren't always filled with decked-out halls or towers of presents under fresh Christmas trees. There are many families out there who are stretching shoestring budgets as they try to keep celebrity spirits up during what is likely a tougher than normal Christmas season. If there's one downside to Christmas, it's that it can intensify emotions, highlighting for many what they don't have in comparison to others. More difficult this year as we prepare for 2023 is the uncertainty of our economic future. Inflation, rising rent, utility costs are the forefront of most parents' minds as they will be forced to choose between buying more Christmas gifts for kids or making that arrears payment on their power bill. These decisions and financial hardships won't be easy and could cloud the judgment of those who are struggling particularly hard this Christmas season. We urge everyone in our community to be cognizant and aware of these issues as you brave the shopping malls, company parties, and supermarkets in the days and weeks ahead. Big things are scheduled for Guam, with a major moving operation scheduled to interrupt traffic on Marine Corps Drive as the Department of Public Works and Public Safety officers work with Ukadu power plant officials to move large equipment from the Port Authority to the construction site at Ukadu. The island will be precariously busy over the next few weeks on many different fronts. Now is the time for us to live and practice the anaphemalic spirit by looking out for our friends, families, and neighbors as we do our best to celebrate safely this season. All right, so much for that. Do you know anything? Do you know more than what you knew before?
Not a thing.
Are you really prompted to do something that you might not have thought of? Or is just more feel-good lingo leading up to the Christmas? I'm trying to kind of slide in and empathize into people's empathy because it is Christmas after all, right?
This is a filibuster of a editorial.
A filibuster of an editorial, yeah. Yeah, where's Ebenezer Scrooge now that we really need him, you know? It's a little early to break out the Christmas bah humbug signs, but we'll get there. All right, let's see what we got on the card for today. I start out with Metzger Bar versus Christians. And a preview, they're coming after us, Jose. They're coming after us. Next on the agenda is Won't versus the CCU. That's Won't Parkinson. Then we've got Ken versus Rory. Identity politics versus education. If you're a teacher here, especially if you're a GFT member, you want to be sure you stay tuned for that. We've got the Heartbeat Act versus Bell's Law, Feds versus Jack Dorsey, FBI versus free speech, Wichita State versus biology, Kenyon College versus education, Dave Sablon versus pro-abortion, and this is in quotes, pro-abortion Catholics. As we know, You can't be pro-abortion and be Catholic. It's a classic case of an oxymoron.
What's the word? Anathema?
Anathema. Yeah, it is anathema. Okay, so we start out with Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism. Paul Zerzan got a decision out of the Civil Service Commission, which I'll probably put on the card tomorrow. I got so many things today that I kind of had to sift and winnow a little bit. But you remember the drill. The narrative is that the bowl of rice is red. The truth is that it's orange. We go through this every day on multiple different fronts. Public Law 36-34, which is an extremely important public law, and it has advanced the cause of transparency quite a ways forward. And what 36-34 says that when boards and commissions publish their notice of meetings, and they've got to publish a notice a week before the meeting and 2 days before the meeting, when they do that, they've got to include the agenda for the meeting. And if they don't include, and the agenda items must be sufficiently descriptive to put the public on notice as to what's to be discussed. And if they don't comply with that, then everything they do at the meeting is void. It doesn't count, which could be really disastrous for boards that make important decisions in that context. And I go through the paper every day and look for violators that are violating the law. And today it's the Cannabis Commission. And their meeting is scheduled for 2 p.m. this afternoon. I hate to tell you folks, but all of the stuff that you did at the meeting is null and void because you have 9 items on your agenda, and here's item number 6, other discussions. Now let's see if we could figure out what they're going to be discussing, Jose. My first guess, the restoration of the Holy Roman Empire.
It's possible.
Yeah. My second guess, how many angels can dance on the head of a pin?
That one's an absolute.
Yeah, for sure they'll spend some time talking about that one. You have any ideas of what they might be discussing in other discussions?
I'm going to have a list of ideas, and if they don't get discussed, I'm going to be very angry.
Write a nasty letter to them, yeah. Mm-hmm. But that item means that the new business to include cannabis identification card applications and responsible official applications submitted by Tricia Danielle Blas, Eugene Peter Tovis Areola, and Sue Wang Chu, also known as Ronald Sue. If they were granted, it doesn't count because the Cannabis Commission screwed up their agenda. I don't know what it's going to take. Maybe when we get a new attorney general, he'll send out a circular saying, fellas, stop doing this.
You can call that meeting up in smoke.
Yeah, they did a lot. They discussed a lot of stuff, but it all went up in smoke, right? Yeah. But they were, compliance with the open government law, Jose, is high on their list of things to do. Okay, next I've got Metzger versus Christians, and I warned they are coming after us. And this is by Andrew Mark Miller, ran in Fox News. The head of a conservative Christian group in Virginia is speaking out after members of her organization were turned away from a restaurant based solely on their religious views. Victoria Cobb, president of the nonprofit Christian lobbying organization called Family Foundation of Virginia, told Fox News Digital that several members of her group were scheduled to hold a private event at a side room at Metzger Bar and Butchery in Richmond, Virginia, when they received a call an hour and a half before the reservation saying the reservation had been canceled. Not only was their reservation canceled, they were canceled, Jose. The reason given for the cancellation, according to Cobb, was a member of the staff at the restaurant had looked up the organization's website, which states that the group advocates for policies based on biblical principles. Well, when you find that out, you can't blame them, right? Yeah. Biblical principles that enable families to flourish at the state and local level, prompting the wait staff, I guess the whole wait staff, to refuse to serve the group. Metzger Bar and Butchery canceled Family Foundation of Virginia's reservation an hour and a half before the group was due to arrive. Quote, "It's alarming and disgraceful that a restaurant has a religious or political litmus test for who gets in the door," Cobb told Fox News Digital. "I think people will find that disturbing." Metzger Bar and Butchery acknowledged in a social media post that they had, in fact, canceled the reservation due to religious beliefs and political advocacy of the foundation. Of course they had to go on social media because they got bragging rights now. Look what we did to these Christians. And here's a quote from the site. Metzger Bar and Butchery has always prided itself on being an inclusive environment for people to dine in, the Post said. In 8 years of service, we have rarely refused service to anyone who wished to dine with us. Rarely refused. Recently refused service to a group that had booked an event with us after the owners of Metzger found out it was a group of donors to a political organization that seeks to deprive women and LGBTQ plus persons of their basic human rights in Virginia. You got to figure out, what are the basic human rights of Virginia? The ability to kill babies. That's a basic human right. The Post added that the restaurant has always refused service to anyone for making our staff uncomfortable. They damn sure don't want me coming in there, I'll tell you.
No way.
They'll tell you that. Yeah.
So
Always refuse service to anyone for making our staff uncomfortable, which was a driving force behind the decision. You're going to say something, Jose?
No, I was just couldn't wait for the wine room, the large dining room, and the safe space for the employees.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, you think they could have at least told the gals from the Christian, what's the name of it, Family Foundation of Virginia. They could have come around to the back door of the restaurant, and the staff could have handed them something to eat out of the back door, right? Yeah. Many of our staff are women and or members of the LGBTQ plus community. All of our staff are people with rights who deserve dignity and a safe work environment. We respect our staff's established rights as humans and strive to create a work environment where they can do their jobs with dignity, comfort, and safety. Now, if they had let the, what the heck's the name of that outfit? Family Foundation of Virginia to come in there and eat, this would have been very dangerous, Jose, because these employees deserve safety. Very, very dangerous.
Talk about creating your own victimhood for the sake of it. This is crazy.
It is.
I hope everyone remembers this name and never goes to that bar and grill.
Well, I'm going to get to that. Yeah, I'm going to get to that for sure. Yeah, so We respect our staff's established rights as humans and strive to create a work environment where they can do their jobs with dignity, comfort, and safety. Now, we know that speech is violence, Jose. If someone says something naughty, that's violence. But I'm going to stop here and point out that the Democrat Party should seize on this, because this is an example of real democracy.
Exactly.
This is real democracy, where the employees in the restaurant decide who gets to come in and who doesn't. And you notice they didn't go through any long falderall or high-tech operations. They just decided. And they told management, and management said to that group, "You're out of here." Cobb said it's alarming and disgraceful that a restaurant has a religious or political litmus test for who gets in the door. Cobb told Fox News Digital her group firmly believes in treating everyone with respect, and took issue with the explanation provided by the restaurant, making it even worse, Jose. How dare they? It's so amazingly hypocritical to pride yourself on creating an inclusive environment and announce that in order to defend how you exclude people from your restaurant. But obviously, Cobb doesn't understand the meaning of the word inclusivity. She probably doesn't understand the meaning of the word equity, and she probably doesn't understand the meaning of the word diversity. She's probably stuck with the meanings that we've all used for the last 100 years.
She's the smartest one in the room.
But she's not woke. So all of her knowledge, and of course I keep making this point, all of the things that you thought you knew have to be debunked, clear the decks for the new Marxist state. Cobb said that if her group had been allowed to eat at their establishment, the waiting staff would have encountered a group of very kind people who treated them well and would have tipped them well. Virginia's discrimination laws do have clear, it would be very clear violation of religious discrimination, Cobb said, because that's what you find on our website, that all our viewpoints are directly and intentionally taken from biblical admonitions, and that we are a faith-based organization. Well, they double down, Jose. You know, not only, do people know what they are, but they read this scandalous book called the Bible. Yeah, well, I wonder what other horrible
They're
things.
just asking for it.
They are, for sure. Since the incident went public, the Family Foundation says they have been inundated with hateful messages, dozens of which were obtained by Fox News Digital. Now, I'm going to use some workaround here. For instance, one of the messages was F*** you. F*** your religion. That was one of the messages. One message with the subject line, "Kill yourself," stated every single one of you should face retribution. Another message referred to the group as Bible-toting freaks and used the phrase, "Hail Satan." Cobb says she has not received any communication from the restaurant since the incident and would be happy to chat with ownership anytime about the situation. Fox News Digital reached out to Metzger Bar and Butchery, and the establishment declined to comment beyond their usual social media explanation. Now, I got some advice for you guys out there at the foundation, the Family Foundation of Virginia, and I suspect everybody's out there saying, "Sue the pants off them, sue the pants off of them." In other words, playing the Rory Respicio card. Spend thousands and thousands of dollars and wait 2 or 3 years, right? Don't do that. Make some picket signs. Get out in front of that restaurant and alert the public if that bigots run this place. And let the public know. Hurt them in the pocketbook. Otherwise, you're not going to have any effect whatsoever. And it's nice to be, kind and gentle and everything like that. But I think we found out here on the island that, when you're dealing with evil, you can't use, a kid gloves approach. You got to take the kid gloves off and put on 6-ounce boxing gloves and swing away. 54 weeks of picket in front of the cathedral in Agania. I'm not going to get into cause and effect or coincidence or anything like that, but 54 weeks of a picket line in front of the Agania Cathedral for the Bishop's Mass certainly had an effect. So all you guys out there in Virginia, I know you're listening to me, out there in international radio listening audience, that's got to be the next news story here. Okay, I got to take a break, but when I come back from the break, I've got 3 folks in the green room already. Of course, our Carl. I've got Kellis, and I've got Johnny Utah.
Christmas is a very special time, but it can also be a very hard time. For the foster children Harvest House serves, it can be difficult and painful being away from their families and siblings. During Harvest House's Christmas celebration event, we hope that siblings living in different foster homes can join together to share in Christmas joy. We need your help to provide all 600 plus foster children with Christmas gifts. Help us make this a memorable Christmas for each of them. Harvest House will be accepting gifts until December 14th. Contact us at 300-5433 or email harvest.house@hbcguam.net if you have questions or want a suggested gift list. That's 300-5433 or email harvest.house@hbcguam.net.
All 3 stations, all 3 morning shows. Thanks to all the listeners for Pika's Best, Choice Broadcasting has swept the top 3 best radio stations. The Point, Boss 104, and Star 101. Top 3 radio personalities, Kyle Mandapat, Ray Gibson, and Daryl Lizava. Put the power of Pika's Best to work for you. If you're an advertiser, call 671-888-7346 for information, rates, and packages. And let us get your message out to Pika's Best listeners with Pika's Best Broadcasters. And thanks for listening to Pika's Best.
And now, back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Okay, so short break, and then we go from Virginia, from Richmond, Virginia, to our tailgaters. Let's see, we got the tailgaters. We got a tailgater. Well, we don't know where, from an undisclosed location. He could be on island. He could be in Moscow. He could be in Manhattan. He could be in Timbuktu, for all we know. And then we've got Kellis and Johnny Utah straight from Salt Lake City. So go for it, most dangerous man in the room.
Good afternoon, Bob. I don't want to make you and Jose feel uncomfortable, but I could be in the room with you right now, disguised as a piece of studio equipment.
That's very possible, our Carl. Yeah.
Don't mean to make you uncomfortable.
All right.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment about this. You've commented about Saul Alinsky and his classic Radicals Guide, Rules for Radicals, and you've told me, and I'm sure you mentioned it to others, that it's really quite it's a good book, actually, for people no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on. First of all, it acquaints you with what tactics are being used against you.
It's not a what-to-do book. It's a how-to-do-it book.
Exactly, yes. That last chapter, there's one chapter that is worth the entire cost of the book. Maybe it's the next to the last chapter, titled Tactics. And the quote at the beginning of it says, "We will either find a way or make one." But I think the perfect tactic for this event is rule number 4. The 4th rule is make the enemy live up to their own book of rules. You can kill them with this, for they can no more obey their own rules than the Christian church can live up to Christianity. The 4th rule, well, he goes on to say other things. But if they really want to take this to the logical extreme, and Disney found out the hard way, but there's a lot of people that don't agree with a lot of the woke religion that they're preaching and forcing on people. I hope people in that area will flood social media with memes and posts about that particular restaurant not wanting your money if you don't support the killing of innocent children. They should just flood that entire area, social media, and we'll see what happens. I mean, if they want to play this this way, well, let's take it to its logical conclusion. You don't want people's money if they don't agree with you ideologically. So let's see where that goes.
Well, Olinsky also said that the tactics that you pick must be something that your soldiers are going to enjoy, right?
Enjoy, yes.
Yeah. So that's why I suggest the picket line. I can't think of anything more fun than carrying a sign out in front of that restaurant that says, "I can't eat here, I'm Christian," or "Go to McDonald's," or "Try Kentucky Fried," or something like that.
Yeah, and it's kind of hard to ignore that. I mean, a lot of people aren't really active on social media, but it's awfully hard when you're driving by a restaurant and there's even a few people picketing up and down the front of a restaurant. It gets a little hard to ignore, and people see that and they say, well, I don't think it's good to kill innocent children. I don't think I'll go there anymore. That's really terrible.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that also agree with him, which is fine. If you want to go there, fine. But I think they need to take it to its logical conclusion.
Absolutely.
And they threw down the glove.
And they could not only win this battle, but they could start winning the war. Because the message would be, you want to beat up on Christians, this is what's going to happen to you. Don't even think about going there.
Yeah, because either way this turns out, it delivers a message to people looking on. If the restaurant wins at this and there's no reaction, then the public gets the idea that, well, I'm not going to, speak up because this kind of thing will happen. But if there is a counter reaction and there's protests, then that also delivers a message. So either way, the public's going to get some kind of message. Anyway, Bob, thank you for allowing me to chime in. I do appreciate it.
Yeah, well, you can go back to your secret mission again, or Carl.
Yes.
I'm not going to say anything about safety to you. I know I'd just be wasting my breath.
Okay, I'll talk to you later.
All right. And let's see, next caller I've got here is Kellis. Hello, Kellis.
Hey, Judge. So I was talking to Joan. I was saying the comparison that, the baker that wouldn't cook, bake a cake for that gay couple.
Right.
So they were, people were attacking them. But what I think is so great is that the nation, supported the baker. I think they actually got more. I mean, they got unlimited free advertisement, and a lot of people, they may have lost some customers, but I think they gained a lot more. So I see this restaurant losing more customers than they'll gain, but I think it's just so odd that for the Christians are attacked both ways. As a business owner, you're attacked because you do not serve people that do not follow your faith, but as a customer, you can be denied service because of your faith. And it's both sides. You know what I'm saying? They're playing both sides of the fence, and I just don't see that being good for them.
Good points, Kellis.
Or the people that are attacking us.
Good points, Kellis. Thank you, sir, for chiming in on that one.
Okay, Judge.
Can I butt in for just a second? That actually had me asking. They're not compatible, are they? One is a separate case from the other. Like you have somebody expressing or who is engaging in their religious beliefs, the cake maker, but the restaurant, is that a different story, or could that be considered the same thing?
I don't see how it could. Yeah, because the cake case, the baker is saying, I can't make this cake with, with 2 Thomas Deweys on top of it because it's contrary to my religious belief and my free exercise of religion comes in here. Therefore, I'm not going to do it. Supreme Court found a way of not deciding on the real issue. Yeah, they said that the animus of the board in, where was it, Virginia? There's a board that considered this, and their animus was so anti-religious that they found for the baker, but they didn't actually rule on the point. There are going to be some real hard decisions coming down on this whole area, and it all goes back to, one of my favorite books, the United States Constitution. And just to make sure I got it right, if you look at the very first amendment in the United States Constitution, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Now, I've explained this before, but briefly, establishment of religion means a government-supported or dominated church. When the United States first became a country, several of the states had official state religions. The last state to do away with its official state religion was Massachusetts in 1820, because the Bill of Rights applied only against the national government, not against the states, until the 14th Amendment came along, and that's another story. So that's what establishment of religion means. And then prohibiting of the free exercise, that's kind of self-explanatory. I think we know what free exercise of religion means. But there are abundant court cases on both those precepts, and I suspect it's going to be where the battle is drawn in the future. And, of course, you can anticipate the Democrats kvetching about, well, yeah, six conservatives on the Supreme Court, Donald Trump, the usual stuff, instead of going to actually what the Constitution says and what the Constitution means, which has nothing to do with Democrat positions on constitutionality. Okay, let's head from here to Utah and see what Johnny Utah's got to say. Tell us more, Johnny Utah.
Good afternoon, Judge. Well, if I could add 2 things. I was going to talk about Kirk Cameron and his library roll call that for his book that got canceled by more than 50 libraries across the nation because they said that it went against their did not align with their LGBTQ agenda. I don't know if you read this. It was in the New York Post. It was also on Fox. And so you're right. The Christians are under attack. That's from coast to coast. There's the library in Providence, Rhode Island, all the way to a library in San Diego. All of them told his publisher, no, we don't want you here. We don't want Christian values being read to our kids. But, yet the libraries, all these public libraries are having, identity clinics and, the drag queen read hours and just completely, inundating the children, and kids are impressionable, especially up until the point of like 10, 11, 12 years old. They're just overwhelming them with all this LGBTQ sexualization, and it's an attack. And to Jose, what he was talking about, I think it's apples and oranges with the baker and the restaurant, because the baker is being forced to include their beliefs of marriage into his work, whereas the restaurant is not being forced to include anything that group was going to do or present into any of their work. All that the group there wasn't going to require the restaurant to prepare some special meal that only abides by Christian values. They were going to order whatever they already had on the menu. They just were having a meeting there. They weren't going to ask the waitress and the cook to come and join them and force them into listening to their agenda and their meeting. So I do see a big difference. I agree with the judge. It's apples and oranges on that.
Yeah, I think so, Johnny. Of course, which of the sins is the greater? And I think the greater of the sins is the group from Virginia, the Family Foundation of Virginia, because according to the folks at Metzger's Bar, the foundation folks have impure thoughts. And how could anybody in that restaurant be safe when people with impure thoughts are allowed to come in?
Is that like saying I believe in Jesus? Is that the impure thought?
Yeah, that would be pretty bad, yeah.
Or just stop looking at me. Johnny's looking at me, Mom.
Yeah, good, Jose. Okay, thanks for calling, Johnny. How's it going back there in Salt Lake City?
We are getting hit with a blizzard. We're going to have snow maybe up to a foot just in the valleys down here and up to 2 to 3 feet up in the Wasatch. It just started about 2 hours ago. It's going to end tomorrow around 6 or 7. One of the biggest storms that this region's gotten in a while.
Well, good luck with that. We'll just have to tough it out. Tough it out here with, the beginning of the dry season now. The breezes are picking up. The overnight temperatures are dropping a little bit. It's becoming a little bit more comfortable every day, but we'll think about you, Johnny.
It's going to be cold and snowy. It's not going to be fun. Alrighty, I miss Alupang and Tumon and all that. That's where I would much rather be on a beach right now.
Okay, Johnny, good talking to you as usual. Johnny, Utah, all the way from Salt Lake City. Let's take a short break and we'll move on to the next item on the card.
Santa's coming and things are looking up. Bank Pacific has rolled out Rudolph's favorite My Christmas loan with an annual percentage interest rate as low as 5.99% and up to $50,000. And with the Bank Pacific contactless Visa debit card, you can have the flexibility of using your money when you want to, where you want to. My Christmas loan, contactless Visa debit card. Let's make Christmas merrier. Member FDIC, equal opportunity lender. Credit conditions apply. Merry Christmas from Bank Pacific.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Okay, so here we are coming back from the break, and what I should have said, what I said was after the break we'll go on to the next item on the card. What I should have said is after the break we won't go on to the next item on the card. Because the next item on the card is won't versus CCU. Now, for newcomers, won't is Won't Parkinson, a senator-elect. You'd never know he was a senator-elect because he's already got up to speed on all the bad habits of sworn-in senators.
I thought he was part of the 36.5 legislature.
He's very precocious in that regard. So, and my own comment here, he's going to talk about CCU giving raises to its management people, et cetera. And you know me, ordinarily, I'd probably have some criticism of that myself. I'm a small government guy. I want to see an effective, efficient government operating within the rule of law. on at least a break-even basis. Break-even meaning it doesn't go into debt. That's what break-even means. And, of course, the more you pay in salaries, the harder it becomes to break even, because the more money you spend, the harder it becomes to break even. But just a section here that I got to find here real quick. Well, I'll get to it. So ordinarily, that's where I'm coming from. And you'll recall that a couple of years ago, when CCU gave some raises and violated the open government law, I was on that like a duck on a June bug, and the raises had to be rescinded. But there's something that, you know, and Won't's approach to things that that causes me to treat this article and treat what he said a little bit differently, and I'll get to it in a second. Here's how the article goes. If you were like me, God, perish the thought. You were appalled when you saw that the CCU authorized raises just a few days ago. Well, I believe in paying our rank-and-file employees a fair wage. This raise was not for the rank and file. Kind of tells you where he's coming from already, doesn't he? The only people given raises with this CCU decision were the top management, already the top earning individuals in the agency. And, you know, envy is a dangerous thing, Jose. The Waterworks Authority general manager was already making $174,990 a year, with $53,788 in benefits, for a total salary and benefits of $228,778. The equivalent position in the Commonwealth of the Northern Marianas, the Drinking Water and Wastewater Division Manager of the Commonwealth Utilities Corporation, makes $100,000 per annum as per an October 1, 2021 job listing. Maybe we should fire John B. and bring the guy from the CNMI down here, and that way we could have the same kind of power service that they have, right? It's only fair. I do not begrudge. Actually, that job encompasses more responsibility, as it is essentially the general manager of the Waterworks and Solid Waste Authority combined. I do not begrudge the GWA general manager. He is a professional engineer. That's a run-on sentence, Jose. He is a professional engineer and manager who is very qualified for the job. The pay raise was approved by the Consolidated Commission on Utilities, and they are responsible for determining the priorities of our utility agencies. Yeah, here we go. This is what you must take into consideration on the CCU. With so many people hurting right now, was a raise for the people who already make the most money in their agency the most prudent thing to do? Maybe, maybe not. But the fact that people are hurting is not the touchstone upon which that decision is made. If you're talking about private business, which the CCU isn't, you have to pay enough, you have to pay someone enough, you have to pay enough money for a position to get someone who can handle it, and you have to pay him enough money so that he'll stay. And if you're paying more money than that, you're wasting money. If you got somebody who'll work for you at $100,000 a year, and it's Christmas time, and you say, I'm going to give them a raise to 110, you're wasting money. I know that sounds like we're back to Ebenezer Scrooge again, but that's the way economics works. You don't go into an automobile, to a used car lot, size up a car and ask the salesman how much it costs. The salesman said that'll set you back $15,000. You don't say, well, I don't know if that's enough or not. How about 17? Would that work? That just isn't the way the word works. Then he goes on to really flesh out his case. Utility prices are so high. The government of Guam has had to subsidize GPA in order to cut ratepayer bills by $100 a month, just so people can barely afford their power. The GPA general manager before this raise already made a salary of $225,000 a year. We are in a crisis of affordability, and utility costs contribute greatly to the rise in cost of living, which, if you're paying attention, Walt Parkinson, is out of control for the CCU unless they go to OPEC armed with submachine guns. Going on, while $30,000 in raises may seem nominal to some, in the middle of the cost of living crisis, it sends a message to the ratepayer that while they must pinch their pennies and make sacrifices to survive. Now, here's the part I was looking for. While they must pinch pennies and make sacrifices to survive, others in the higher socioeconomic classes get raises. Now, that's enough right there. I'm going to repeat that. Others in the higher socioeconomic classes get raises. The bourgeoisie. Yeah. How dare they? So the CCU, you're just not tuning in on the right stuff. I hear a lot, I read a lot about what's going on at the CCU. We have Simon on here a lot. And my sense is that the CCU operates on the basis of competence. They want competent people to do competent work, to provide utilities. I don't think that they are class conscious. And if I found out that anybody on that CCU board were class conscious, you're not going to get my vote anymore. That's not what the CCU is for, class consciousness. But here's what Won't said. It sends a message to the ratepayer that while they must pinch their pennies and make sacrifices to survive, others in a higher socioeconomic class should get a raise. And there's just more falderall after that.
Sounds like employees who are scared for their lives. Something just created out of thin air.
Yeah, right. These raises mean that they see that the GPA will no longer be a safe place. All right, I got a feeling I know who it is on the line. Another Joe. Okay, well, I'm probably going to have to leave the CCU behind here. Although I might bring it back tomorrow. I'm just so caught up with this line, others in higher socioeconomic classes. I'm looking for, what we used to think we had was basically a classless society, that we had a merit system and we paid people according to what they were worth, not what class they fit into. But of course, we've gone so far off that, with oppressors and oppressed and underserved populations and on and on and on.
It's a good thing the GM's name is John and not Duke.
Yeah. Okay, another Joe. Let's hear a heartbeat report.
Okay, so I think they're in recess right now. I have to double check that because it's almost 5 o'clock. But so they voted, 9 senators voted for Bill 291-36 to go into the third reading file to be voted on. If the same 9 senators vote for it again, then it goes on to the governor, which we know she's going to veto. So we have to wait and see how they actually vote if the same 9 senators vote for it.
Yeah, no, there's always some gamesmanship here. Sometimes senators will vote to move the bill to third reading just so they can make a statement by voting against it.
Well, let's hope that they vote for it.
Well, we'll have to wait.
Okay, well, thanks.
Thanks for the report, another Joe. Okay, let's see. I've got another caller on the line, but I'm just about up to the big halftime show. Let me see who this is. It's not on my phone. It's Troy. Okay, Troy, I'd really like to talk to you, but I've only got 2 minutes before the big halftime show. There's no Hope Cristobal screen test today, so I'll pick you up right after the end of the big halftime show. Thanks for holding on, or you can call back.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Arrest in plane bombing. I'm Laura Cantor, Fox News. A suspect in the 1988 deadly plane bombing over Lockerbie, Scotland, is in U.S. custody. Fox's Marianne Rafferty has more from Los Angeles.
The Justice Department says he's a Libyan intelligence official who made the bomb that brought down Pan Am Flight 103. He'll face federal charges in a D.C. courtroom tomorrow. He's the third Libyan charged in the case, but only the first to appear in an American courtroom for prosecution. The plane exploded over Scotland on December 21st, 1988.
The attack killed 270 people, including 190 Americans. The splashdown of NASA's Artemis 1 Orion capsule happening off the coast of Baja California Sunday, on the 50th anniversary of the Apollo 17 lunar landing. Here's NASA Administrator Bill Nelson telling NASA TV about the importance of Sunday's splashdown.
It's historic because we are now going back into space, into deep space, with a new generation. Kennedy just stunned everybody with the Apollo generation.
NASA needed a successful landing to remain on track for the next Orion flight around the moon. A historic moment taking place in Los Angeles Sunday as the new mayor was sworn in.
Karen Bass, the first woman of color to serve as mayor of Los Angeles, sworn in by Kamala Harris, the first woman of color to serve as vice president at City Hall in Los Angeles Sunday.
And I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of mayor.
Of the office of mayor.
According to my best ability.
According to my best ability.
Madam Mayor.
Bass has pledged to immediately address the city's homelessness crisis by declaring a state of emergency on day one. The six-term congresswoman succeeds term-limited Mayor Eric Garcetti.
That's Fox's Ted Lindner. America is listening to Fox News.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Santa's coming and things are looking up. Bank Pacific has rolled out Rudolph's favorite My Christmas loan with an annual percentage interest rate as low as 5.99% and up to $50,000. And with the Bank Pacific contactless Visa debit card, you can have the flexibility of using your money when you want to, where you want to. My Christmas loan, contactless Visa debit card. Let's make Christmas merrier. Member FDIC, equal opportunity lender. Credit conditions apply. Merry Christmas from Bank Pacific.
The Fed is meeting this week with another rate hike expected, although the Fed chairman has indicated a more moderate policy may be coming soon. Fox's Jessica Rosenthal has more.
New inflation data is expected Tuesday. Last month, the CPI was lower than it had been over the summer at 7.7%, but this past week, the producer price index rose 0.3%. Last week, Fed Chairman Jerome Powell said that after the last meeting in November, the board agreed ongoing rate increases will be appropriate.
The full effects of our rapid tightening so far are yet to be felt. Thus, it makes sense to moderate the pace of our rate increases as we approach the level of restraint that will be sufficient to bring inflation down.
He said the time to moderate rate increases may come as soon as their December meeting, but that restoring price stability will require holding policy at a restrictive level for some time.
At least 13 bald eagles were likely poisoned, 3 of them dying, after eating the carcasses of euthanized animals that were improperly disposed of at a Minnesota landfill. An investigation is underway. There has been a surge in the crime known as mailbox phishing. It's where criminals steal checks, cash, and money orders from the mail.
Criminals who engage in what's called mailbox phishing. One New Yorker confronted a man who was allegedly mailbox phishing by apparently slipping his belt, coated with sticky stuff, through the narrow mailbox slot, all in an attempt, it seems, to pull out the envelopes. The NYPD has plastered signs on some mailboxes warning people about the trend. Earlier this year, New York City police busted a ring believed responsible for stealing more than $100,000 worth of checks from mailboxes. Isabel Vincent told us 2 checks she once mailed were fished out of a box, altered, and cashed for more than $1,500. In Santa Monica, California, boxes were brazenly bashed in to steal mail.
That's Fox's Eric Shawn. The U.S. Postal Service says that mailbox phishing is a problem across the nation. I'm Laura Cantor, and this is Fox News.
All 3 stations, all 3 morning shows. Thanks to all the listeners for Pika's Best, Choice Broadcasting has swept the top 3 best radio stations. The Point, Boss 104, and Star 101. Top 3 radio personalities, Kyle Mandapat, Ray Gibson, and Daryl Lizava. Put the power of Pika's Best to work for you. If you're an advertiser, call 671-888-7346 for information, rates, and packages. And let us get your message out to Pika's Best listeners with Pika's Best Broadcasters. And thanks for listening to Pika's Best.
Christmas is a very special time, but it can also be a very hard time. For the foster children Harvest House serves, it can be difficult and painful being away from their families and siblings. During Harvest House's Christmas celebration event, we hope that siblings living in different foster homes can join together to share in Christmas joy. We need your help to provide all 600 plus foster children with Christmas gifts. Help us make this a memorable Christmas for each of them. Harvest House will be accepting gifts until December 14th. Contact us at 300-5433 or email harvest.house@hbcguam.net if you have questions or want a suggested gift list. That's 300-5433 or email harvest.house@hbcguam.net.
Another great halftime show. The last picture in the Rogues Gallery there was me at Pirates Cove on Saturday with Don, the legendary Don Farrell, and Don is signing my copy of his latest book, which I can highly recommend. Don's a great writer. He's collected some great photographs, and you can pick up a copy of Don's book out at Pirates Cove. Pretty reasonable price, too. So That's how Don Farrell got it. Even though he's not a tailgater, he lives in Tinian, so it's a little harder for him. But he writes good books, so maybe that'll work just as well. Okay, I'm waiting for Troy to get on the line. He's there. Troy wants to talk about the Heartbeat Act. So this is a good time to talk Heartbeat. Go ahead, Troy.
Hi, Bob. Hi, Jose. Buenas, tailgaters. Yeah, I have a question, Bob, about how the dynamics of the legislature works. So this is their final session, right? And I don't know whether the speaker will adjourn the legislature for the final time. But let's say the legislature passes the Heartbeat Act by, let's say, 11 votes. Let's just pretend. Isn't the way this works that if the legislature adjourns, I think it's called like sine die or something like that?
Sine die, yeah.
The governor just decides not to act on the bill, and after 30 days, it's pocket vetoed, and nothing can be done about that?
That's correct.
Oh, interesting. So there might be more than just legislative gamesmanship going on here, and maybe the reason we don't hear much from the governor herself about this issue is she knows that no matter if pass or fail in the Guam legislature, she doesn't have to lift a finger in order to kill this bill.
It might also explain some of the gamesmanship in getting the bill to the floor of the legislature.
Yeah, that could explain it.
Yeah, so let's see. Today is the 12th. We're not in pocket veto territory yet because the governor has 10 days, Sundays accepted, to sign or veto the bill.
Troy, are you saying there's a chance that something that is brought alive out of the legislature will be left to die in front of the governor?
Well,
where has she said anything like that? It sounds familiar. I can't place it in my mind.
Every pun intended, I suppose. But couldn't the, because this is called their final session, and I'm just wondering, at the end of it, would the speaker adjourn it sine die, no matter whether that happens this week or at the end of December? Wouldn't that be?
That's
the
right.
end
That
of the
would be the trigger. Yeah, you're right, Troy. So if today they pass the bill and they adjourn sine die, then the pocket veto period 30 days starts. You're exactly right.
And I suppose we should have some faith in Speaker Therese Chalahi that she wouldn't adjourn the legislature sine die, because that would be a little dangerous, considering we don't know what would happen, what kind of emergency would happen between then and the time the 37th Guam legislature takes office. So maybe there's less gamesmanship happening than we think.
That's very true, Troy. And here's another way to look at it. My sense is that the governor is anxious to get that bill in front of her and write veto on it. That she will see it as playing to her base, and she'll wear that veto proudly like a badge. So letting it die in a pocket veto doesn't seem like the kind of thing she would be tempted to do.
I think you're right. And but I also would wear proudly as a badge Doug Moylan's resuscitation of the Bell Areola law, which I like very much.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, pro-lifers charge up. This is our time.
It's our time. You're right, Troy.
Thank you, Bob. You have a great day.
You too. Okay, let's see. I've got time for another phone call. I've got Melvin Duenas on the line who wants to talk about CCU and GPA. Go for it, Melvin.
Hi, Bob. Buenas noches, tailgaters. My name is, Matt Mel, and I'm zealous for Constitution and for freedom and for pro-life and for ethics and honesty.
And told tales, apparently, huh?
Yes. And you mentioned that I had wet feet before coming in. I didn't have wet feet. I just didn't like to be too negative on the air. But when it comes to something I know about, I got this self-indignation that just rises. And talking about GPA, there's just absolutely too much waste. I am really against this selfish game that's taking place. And, although I'm just not 90 votes before landing that CCU, I wanted to attack that thing right on the head the first 6 months of my opportunity. But, I just thought I put my name there. I didn't do nothing. I should have worked harder, but nonetheless, I really feel, we can run the power company when we just cut off a lot of this top echelon situation. Because I put in over 18 years in the Guam Power Authority in the very heart of the control system. And I've worked on every department of the power company. Every department, the supply, transmission line, and especially generation. And I've seen just way too much mismanagement and waste. And even our common sense tells us if we put a leader there that's been there for 30, 40 years in that position, it's just way too much money they're making. They're not for the people, they're for themselves. And so I really wanted to hit that nail on the head by starting right with CCU, self-sacrificing our salary and even the directors all the way down, because the hardworking people of the power company is the main journeyman with a good supervisor. I don't understand why we should have too much superintendent for this or that, for almost every echelon, making so much money and driving around with thunder trucks. I just feel we just cut the top salary, and instead of supporting this with taxpayers' money, I really believe, heart, mind, and soul, that the Guam Power Authority makes the most money out of any agency. And I get real sad when I hear that they can't even pay their bills next month. And to my friend out there at CCU, you guys been there for over 2-3 decades, and you claim that you're going to help the people of Guam with shaving the power bill. Well, what have you been doing if you've been there for almost over 2 decades? Some of you are 3 decades. And some of you have businesses that are affiliated with subcontract with the Guam Power Authority, which is very unethical. I believe that CCU should have no affiliation, but to help the people of Guam to have no self-interest and self-gain, and not just to run a system that you don't know what you're talking about. When we blew up 5 power plants, including the same power plants that we blew up, Cabras won twice for the same kind of situation. Guess who pays for all those thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of repair? It is the people of Guam. We wasted so much money. We could build power plants, new power plants. And we have studied this since back in the early 80s. We have anticipated growth on the island. We have spent money on research for every area of our Guam Power Authority so that we can project the future. Well, now this is almost 40 years later, and we're saying we're still groping in the dark to try to solve the issue, and then we're going to say that we do not have, we can't even pay our system for next month, and then we keep raising our salary? Well, I have a message to John Benavente. John, I've worked with you, and I went to Italy with you, and we purchased those gas turbines. You set me up, and you chose me as the main calibrator technician for those control systems. And as we built those gas turbine fast tracks, we were supposed to save money for the people. I think you should get a salary cut to, I think $100,000 for a director is enough. And all those savings from the top should be channeled to the people of Guam that are hurting so much. Try going to Ironwood.
Did you were you listening? Melvin, take a breath. Were you listening? Melvin,
my name is
Melvin,
Mel. Yeah.
take a breath. This is a talk show. Oh, that doesn't mean you get to do all the talking. I got to get a word in too.
Okay.
Were you listening to the show and my criticism of Walt Parkinson and his?
Oh yeah, I'm against that woke, and I'm against all
But
this
the point is
nonsense
this.
taking place.
The point is this: the fact that people are hurting is not something that the CCU can logically take into as it does its business. I mean, it's a nice, heartwarming thought, etc. But the CCU is not a social welfare agency. Maybe public health and social services or the legislature or something like that.
I agree.
So summarizing what you're saying is that you think that the people are being at the top are being paid too much, and you think that the journeyman with good supervision is the key to a successful power authority, correct?
Exactly.
All right. Now remembering, Melvin, remembering that the election is over, and you're not doing a stump speech right now.
Yes.
Is there anything else that you'd like to say? Any other important fact that you'd like to bring before us?
Yes, I like to challenge the leadership not only in CCU but throughout our island, because Guam God has blessed our island to start living more honestly and ethically and more responsible and accountable. And this selfish gain has to quit and stop. I was just gonna say, if you just walk around Ironwood Estate, there are over 500 living there. And the average power bill is $800 because of for example, they're helping the poor and the suffering that are living there. Well, with their central air condition and to get their houses cool, it's $600 to $800 every month. So I'm not running for public thing. I'm just really upset with a lot of the things going on, especially this woke system and this thing that's taking place not only here but even in the States. So I thank you for Totals and this opportunity to share in the air. And yes, we need to stand up, because if we don't stand up, these selfish people will continue on and on and on in their own and run our country and run our lives.
Okay, Melvin. Well, thanks for calling. Good talking to you.
All right.
Yeah, again, I go back to where I started here with Won's letter to the editor. I'm one who will scrutinize salary increases carefully. And I probably start out with the proposition, I don't like to see government directors being paid too much money, etc. But the part I really got my cork here in Won's letter to the editor is when he said, cost of living crisis, it sends a message to the ratepayer that while they must pinch their pennies and make sacrifices to survive, others in the higher socioeconomic classes should get a raise. So, it looks like we've got somebody, a stay-behind Marxist going into the legislature.
What I'd like to know what defines his boundaries for this any of the social classes that he wants to
well, the people that get high salaries are obviously a higher socioeconomic class.
That's a lot of directorships in government.
And the reason that they get more money is because they're in the class. It's not the other way around. You know that they're of the higher socioeconomic class by looking at their salary. But the reason they get the salary is because they're in the high. It's a tautology.
Are you saying that they're in?
It's a dog chasing its tail.
Right.
All right, so Melvin Duenas ran for CCU, still has some strong feelings about the CCU. Let me go next to Ken versus Rory. And this is a letter, this ran in the Daily News over the weekend. Letter, have we already lost our rights on Guam? According to the former president of South Africa and community activist Nelson Mandela, those who fail to defend their rights will no longer have them. My question for the citizens of Guam is, have we already lost them? There is a mistaken belief that the government of Guam is of the people, by the people, for the people, and nothing could be further from the truth. This is a nice follow-up to Melvin Duenas, huh? That's what Ken says. And then he goes on to say, with the declaration by Rory Respicio to Bob Klitzkie that if Klitzkie wanted information from the Port Authority, take me to court and sue me. Respicio tells citizens that the democracy of Guam is dead. Well, I see where Ken is coming from. I don't know that Rory's, what I'm going to call the Rory approach to government, is the end of democracy, but it's certainly the end of good government. Because people have an absolute statutory right to inspect every single public record at any public agency. And the people have an absolute right to attend every government meeting and record that meeting. And whether or not the directors, the board members like it, whether they like the person, etc., it doesn't make any difference. And if you go to the recording of the board meeting here that started this off, if you go to 18 minutes into the tape and listen to it, it's only about 10 minutes long. And Rory says things, well, this is Robert Klitzkie, and we all know what he's like. You know, it's not coming out and saying, well, you know, Bob's a dirty skunk and an honorary pig stealer, but he's not going to put me up for an position of honorary stevedore, I don't think. And that's not the way government's supposed to operate. It's the opposite of using the government's back scratcher to scratch your own back. What it is using the government's billy club to club people you don't like. And whether or not you like somebody doesn't make any difference. And, you know, as this whole thing plays out, what happened was I asked for documents showing that the port owed Jay Areola $40,000. And I've mentioned this before. It's not $39,987 or $40,002. It's $40,000 even dollars. So I asked for papers showing that the port owed that money. Rory sends back a check showing that they had paid Areola $40,000. Not the same thing at all. So I wrote back to Rory and said, you violated the Sunshine Law. You know, this is what I asked for. I gave him an example, like an invoice. And, of course, then it goes to the CCU. And during the CCU, Judy Guthert says, what about the Sunshine Law request? And then Conchita Titano gets involved. She says, well, if this is harassment, is there anything we can do about it?
Wow.
It's pretty interesting listening, you know. And it's not the end of democracy. It just shows us that we don't understand the public's role with respect to the government, or more importantly, the government's role with respect to the government. You're not put in these positions to allow your tyranny gland to thrive. And that's Rory. And then, you know, if there were any doubt about Rory's bona fides, he, you know, very tough talk, he says, Klitzkie doesn't get to tell me that I violated the Sunshine Law. If he thinks I violated the law, I tell him, take me to court. Tough guy, Rory. Yeah, you think so? Let's go out behind the bill. No, he didn't say that. He says, I got 2 pairs of boxing gloves. No, he didn't say that. He says, take me to court, just showing you what a tough guy he is on that one, right?
You think he'd want to settle?
Well, if we did go to court, we'd probably never get past. We'd probably never get past my motion to dismiss, because he'd say, Bob, why don't we talk settlement on this one?
I still can't wrap my head around the fact that a government official, the person on the board, Conchita Titano, actually thought of the Sunshine Act as a form of harassment, and not a single editorial is talking about that.
Exactly.
Is this how all the boards or every government official and directors feel about the Sunshine Act? Is that it's a form of harassment for them?
She said if it is a form of harassment.
Oh, she asked a question.
Yeah.
Oh.
But, the clever way to make an accusation is to phrase it as a question.
Absolutely.
Is it possible that when the money was missing, that Mr. X was working there at the time? You see what I mean? It's the back door to an accusation. And it's really hard to understand, because in a sense, when I'm doing this FOIA stuff and championing the FOIA, I'm doing their job for them, because they're the ones that should be doing the Sunshine Law requests, the FOIAs, because it would help them develop a story. But it seems that most are just content to say, well, that's what they said, I'll write it up. And then, of course, you heard my workup on the different way that KUAM handled the story. I posted a nice job of covering it. When I went through the KUAM story, it seemed like the gist or the thrust of that story was, let's see if we can find something bad to say about Klitzkie. The headline, did Klitzkie go too far by asking, for public records, and then when they weren't furnished, telling the director that he violated the law?
In that article, if the port had hired a PR firm, it would have been KUAM. They spun it towards Conchita's question.
They did.
So this just in, my understanding is the Office of the Auditor has now been renamed the Office of Government Harassment.
Yeah, for sure, because that's exactly what
that's all they do is make queries.
Is what he does, and then publishes findings that people don't like.
How dare he?
Like when he published the finding on the consigliere and the 19th floor and the mortgage and all that stuff. Remember? Levin did let it sit for a year, then filed a bogus lawsuit for declaratory relief that didn't go to that particular finding, but basically provided the governor with cover. So, it's tough. So if I could ask for a little empathy here, it's a heavy burden placed on my shoulders. Jim Bohannon passed away a few days ago. Rush died a couple years ago. There aren't very many of us left. But somebody has got to call these characters out. If you don't like it, take me to court. So you're right on target there, Ken. Take me to court. The Rory approach to good government. You don't like it, take me to court. All right, let's head for Wrigley Field.
Joyce Broadcasting introduces their unbeatable lineup of morning show.
Hands down winners of Guam's morning radio battle.
Daryl Lizama grooves his way through Boss 104 playing Guam's favorite classic hits.
Morning mouth Ray Gibson shakes the cage on 93.3 The Point.
And now, we are proud to announce the Morning Blender with Kyle Mandapat, mixing it up at sunrise on Star 101.
If you're an advertiser trying to reach the most valuable ears, we've got the shows that listeners have been tuning into for decades.
One call gets all three.
671-888-7346. That's 888-REIO.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Okay, so here we are at Wrigley Field, Chicago, the world's most beautiful ballpark. I touched on this yesterday. I'm going to pick it up today. When the Cubs began their 5-year renovation of Wrigley Field in 2014, one ancillary benefit of the upgrades was supposed to be getting an All-Star game. But the Cubs have yet to be awarded a Midsummer Classic since the All-Star game was last played at Wrigley Field in 1990. But all but 2 teams, the Tampa Rays and the Oakland Athletics, have hosted the game, while 6 teams have hosted it twice. The Pirates, the Padres, the Colorado Rockies, the Cleveland Guardians.
What?
There's a baseball team called the Cleveland Guardians.
I have a feeling I know who they really are.
Yeah, once upon a time they were the Cleveland Indians, but it's ironic, the Cleveland Indians, the Boston Braves, and so on. Athletics takes these names because they want to be identified with the sterling qualities of Native Americans. And the woke on the left want to dump a good name like Cleveland Indians, which is Indian pride, for a nothing name like Guardians.
Watch out, Notre Dame.
Yeah, the Fighting Irish, right? Yeah, I can see it all now. Notre Dame, the Appeasing Irish. It's much better, right? Anyhow, Commissioner Bob Manfred said this week that the Cubs are among teams that have expressed a desire to host an upcoming All-Star game. But as he noted, the Cubs are not alone in that wish. Let's just hope for 2 things. One, that that the Cubs get the All-Star game, and 2, that the Atlanta phenomenon doesn't come into play. That someone in Chicago doesn't do something that's not woke enough, and they take the game away from them like they did with Atlanta. All right, I got somebody coming in the green room here. Johnny Utah back on the merry-go-round for a second time. Second ride on the merry-go-round, Johnny Utah.
Hey, Judge Bob, I just was going to say, you were talking about the Cleveland Indians, and I was thinking, what about Indiana? What are they going to do with that state?
That's going to be a tough one, isn't it? Yeah, Indiana. Maybe just take off the front of it, and then it'll become the state of Anna.
Anna?
Anna.
Yeah, just change the whole name of the state. Yeah. I just was thinking about that when you brought that up with the Cleveland Indians.
Yeah, it's a good idea, John. I mean, good thought, Johnny. Thanks a lot for sharing that with us. Johnny Utah, what are they going to do with Indiana? It's all about Indians, right?
And lots of town names in Wisconsin, New York, villages named after tribes. And
well, I think I've told you about Mukwonago. You probably know where Mukwonago is, right? So I-43.
Has a lake?
Yeah, it's on Phantom Lake.
I used to live on that lake.
Yeah. So what happened was that a couple of French traders, washed up on the shores of that lake, and they ran into a couple of Native Americans. And in French, one of the French traders said to the Indian, he said, "What's the name of this place?" And the Indian didn't quite understand what the Frenchman said, so he said to the other name, Mukwonago, which means, what did he say? And it's been Mukwonago ever since.
No kidding.
Tall tales.
Okay.
Where's your beep beep, Jose? Yeah.
I would have believed you.
Yeah, that's the skill in tall. That's why you got that beep beep back there. See. Yeah.
It's reminiscing. There's a really cool apple orchid out there. I can't remember the name of it. Right outside of the freeway. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting country. Not that I'd ever want to live there, but I like to go back and visit. Next item on the card, identity politics versus education. And this has a derivative local dimension. And here it goes. Weingarten, this is in American Conservatives. Weingarten slammed for tweet highlighting Brittany Griner's race and sexuality after release. This is about Randy Weingarten, who is the president of the American Federation of Teachers. Federation of Teachers here is Local 1581 of the American Federation of Teachers. But the way at least that union is set up, folks in Washington don't make the calls as to what the local union is going to do. You know, they have a constitution and they have rules and per capita payments and things like that. But if I were a teacher, I would really be embarrassed by what the president of their national union said. And here it goes. Twitter users called Randy Weingarten, the head of the teachers union, a hypocrite for her reaction to news Brittany Griner had been released from Russian prison. Griner specifically stated that, Weingarten specifically stated that Griner was gay. During the celebrations, the American Federation of Teachers mentioned that Griner was a gay black woman, which left many wondering why such a description was necessary after the release of that basketball player. In exchange for Victor Bout, a Russian arms dealer, Griner was released from Russian prison by the Biden administration. Some criticized the proportionality of this deal, claiming Bout was a notorious criminal who sought to kill American citizens when his arrest occurred, and that the U.S. should have hoped for more Americans released in the exchange. They criticized Biden specifically for not securing Paul Whelan's release from a Russian prison. Whelan was a former Marine, says a former Marine veteran. He's a Marine veteran who had been sentenced for 16 years to Russian prison on espionage charges. The Biden administration originally wanted to include him in the swap. Weingarten reacted to Biden's tweet praising Griner's release Thursday morning. Over Twitter, she exclaimed, quote, "What a relief! Extraordinary news. A basketball star is now released, as well as a gay black woman." Now, this is a lady who is the president of the teachers union, the second largest teachers union. Identity politics, right? Is it any wonder that we have stuff like the story that I read about turning Christians away at the restaurant? It's all, for so many of these folks, the only thing that counts is identity politics. So if you're gay and black and a basketball player, this was a great swap. Pay no attention to those other folks still stuck over there.
And this is the whole laughing matter of the identity politics. In the news, top of the hour news, where they're remarking how Kamala Harris, the first black female vice president, congratulating and swearing in the first female mayor of Los Angeles or something.
Mm-hmm.
Or like the only thing that Kamala Harris can write on is identity politics, because nothing else she's done has any merit to it.
Absolutely not. She's shown herself to be about as dumb as you could be as far as public exposure is concerned. Can't talk, can't make a speech, just a political disaster, but identity politics saves the day for her. Okay, I got somebody else in the green room here, R. Keith, who wants to talk about identity politics. How do you identify yourself, R. Keith?
Hi, I identify as a transgender penguin.
A transgender penguin. Wow.
Well, that's this week. Last week I was a rainbow trout.
Okay.
But it's whatever I feel at the moment, and you better use my right pronouns, which are Your Royal Highness and Your Majesty.
Got it.
So in response to this Griner travesty, Russia had an interesting response, and it pains me when I find myself increasingly on the side of some Russian politics rather than American. First, the Russian media, and I don't know about Putin himself, but the Russian media essentially said, "See, we won the trade. We had the high road. We have the strong hand," which plays right into this continuing impression that Biden is creating around the world, that we are weak and we are no longer a superpower. But what was more interesting was, and I should have written down remember which media outlet it was, but somewhere in Russia, and it said, the Marines' problem and why he was not released was, 1, he's white, 2, he's a man, 3, he's straight. So I found it interesting that the Russians are onto it.
3 strikes and you're out.
Yeah, I mean, they've figured out the priorities of this regime.
And it just makes us look weak and stupid and easy, So from now on, of course, the other side of this is that if you happen to be gay, be careful about going to Russia, because they're not, there would little value. I'd feel perfect. I've been there 3 times already, and I'd feel perfectly safe going back there again, because I got nothing they want. A straight white male.
Exactly.
I would have no trading value whatsoever to them.
I didn't think about that. That's funny.
Yeah,
exactly. No trade value to you, so you're good to go.
Yeah. Well, once again, Arkees, you hit the nail right on the head, and the way the Russians react to this is extremely important, because this is not going to be the last rodeo. We'll be doing this for a long, long time, and if we show that we can sit at the table with a royal flush and let somebody with a pair of deuces beat us, we're not going to do very well.
I saw an interesting video on YouTube, and it was a gentleman who I'd never heard of, but he was some international supposed expert, and he was talking about the real problem with the West nowadays is that it's run by a bunch of idiots, which I'm like, yeah, that's about right. And he said there's 2 primary problems. 1, Western governments think in the short term, as opposed to Russia and China, who see 20, 30, 40 years down the road. And I think that we could have an entire conversation on that. I think there's ample evidence of that. And the second is that, Xi and Putin can essentially say things and indicate exactly what they're going to do, and nobody in the West takes them seriously. And the example that the man gave was Putin's spokespeople stating that, there might be a use for tactical nuclear weapons in certain circumstances. And the uniform cry from Western governments and Western media was that he was saber rattling. Was he? Nobody takes him serious. Who knows? And we're not doing I don't think we're doing anything to the response to that should have been harsh and immediate. And instead, the West laughed it off. So Putin's like, I can get away with anything.
He could walk down Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody. It wouldn't make any difference.
Yep. Anyway, have a nice day.
Thanks for calling, Arkees.
Thanks.
Okay, we got to go to Churchill Downs next, but before we do, I want to debunk a myth here. Jose Tedpago says, wouldn't that fall under the right to refuse service as a business owner? Going back to turning out the Christians, there's this myth that if you put up a sign in your restaurant that says, we refuse the right to serve anyone, that it has teeth. And when I see these signs, if I have time, I usually ask a responsible purpose person, what is the source of that right? Well, it's my right. But there is no right to refuse service. I read the statute on this show more than once. We have a statute that goes back 100 years here on the island. It goes all the way back to California in the 1920s that says if you run a public accommodation and you don't allow someone in for no reason, you have a slight liability. I can think of misdemeanor and $50 or something. If I remember, I'll bring that in tomorrow. And this statute then goes back before the 1964 Civil Rights Law. So anybody who thinks that he has a right to refuse service to anyone is playing with fire. I don't think that right exists. And I see the signs. I see the signs a lot. I suppose owners take a certain amount of comfort from that. And so it's one of those things, if other people believe it, I guess it works. But if I were advising anybody, I would say don't even think about putting that sign up. You could have reasonable rules of accommodation, no shirt, no shoes, no service. Yeah. But you can't say people with Marine Corps tattoos can't come in. Okay, let's head for Churchill Downs.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus tenactac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Christmas is a very special time, but it can also be a very hard time. For the foster children Harvest House serves, it can be difficult and painful being away from their families and siblings. During Harvest House's Christmas celebration event, we hope that siblings living in different foster homes can join together to share in Christmas joy. We need your help to provide all 600 plus foster children with Christmas gifts. Help us make this a memorable Christmas for each of them. Harvest House will be accepting gifts until December 14th. Contact us at 300-5433 or email harvest.house@hbcguam.net if you have questions or want a suggested gift list. That's 300-5433 or email harvest.house@hbcguam.net.
So here we are, Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky, 6 furlongs and more, and I'll be crossing the finish line for another episode of Tall Tales. Right now I've got another Tim on the line. He wants to talk about right to refuse service. So I will not refuse your right to service here. You can talk on the phone, another Tim.
Well, good afternoon, Bob, and thanks for taking the call.
You're welcome, sir.
Oh, very well. Yes, I was. I've had the same encounters that you have had, and I've often questioned proprietors their right to refuse service. And I remind them that back in the before the Civil Rights Act, that proprietors did have the right to refuse service. And that right was based on discrimination, and that they were basically announcing that they would discriminate on the basis of their preferences for their customers. And it's interesting to see how proprietors that just proudly display that sign in their stores react. But it boils down to the point that when you procure a business license and you put a sign in your window that says open, that doesn't mean that your business is open. It means that your business is open to the public. And any person that comes in that wants to conduct business has the right to conduct business, regardless of whether you like the way they look, the way they talk, or the way they dress. However, the reason why I called is because I did see a sign, a right to refuse service sign in one business that had it spot on, that was perfectly worded. And I won't go into the whole detail, but it was a sign that basically said, I have the right to refuse service to those who steal from me, those who come into my establishment naked, those who threaten my employees, those who have been lawfully restrained or prohibited from these premises. And it goes on and it lists the legal reasons he has the right to refuse service. So, Bob, thank you very much for bringing that up, because a lot of businesses on this island just don't get it.
Yeah, good comment. Another Tim. Thank you very much for siding with me on that one. You did not want to play pin the tail on the talk show host. Good talking to you. Hold on. Okay, so we got about 5 minutes to go. And I got a post here from David Dinsman. He says, hey, Bob, would you count a BCD as a reason for Paul Whelan as a former Marine? Now, here's the question. You know, I mentioned that when all of these write-ups about Paul Whelan, we're calling him a former Marine. And Marines will tell you, you know, if you're a Marine, once a Marine, always a Marine. BCD stands for Bad Conduct Discharge. Back in the day, it used to be referred to as a Boston College. And so David says, if a Marine leaves the Marine Corps with a bad conduct discharge, is he still a Marine? And my question is, I got to research that. I don't know. I understand where you're coming from on that. I think I'll probably start out with a dishonorable discharge, which used to be referred to as a Donald Duck. So if you have a dishonorable discharge from the Marine Corps, are you still a Marine? And of course, a lot would depend on how other Marines would recognize your situation. So I'll see if I can do a little research on that, David. Good question. I'll see if I can come back with something on that tomorrow. Okay, I got about 4 more minutes to go. Next item on the card is the Heartbeat Act versus Bell's Law. And obviously, I don't want to start on that. I just barely scratching the surface on that one. So I'm just going to see what people are talking about on Facebook here. I already talked about David Dinsman and Jose Tadpago and Bonnie Suba. The Virginia case of denying a Christian group was because most of the workers at the restaurant were LGBTQ group and felt unsafe for the Christian group to be in the restaurant. The employees felt in fear of Christian women. Wow. And then Bonnie goes on to talk. Bonnie goes from there to Ukraine. Zelensky ordered the Ukraine Orthodox Church to be closed and arrest their bishops and priests because Zelensky believes that they are siding with the Russians because they pray for peace, the war, and pray for Russian soldiers. And Jose Martinez says, Wait a minute. I go on a little bit farther here. Harvey Agnes says, how would it be if during World War II, clergymen prayed for Nazi soldiers? And I think the answer to that question, Harvey, is a lot depends on how the praying would be done. If you're praying for the souls of the Nazi soldiers, if you are, and there's a couple of different ways of praying. I'm not exactly sure which is the right way to pray, but some say that you should pray for a result. The night of the Mukwonago game, before the game starts, we should all pray to God that we beat Mukwonago. That would be one theory of praying.
That's where you hear, we make plans and God laughs.
The other way is to pray to God that even if Mukwonago beats us, we'll have the strength and courage to bear up under it, which seems to me a little bit more like it. So maybe if a prayer were said and the vocabulary you lose here is really important. Are we talking about Nazi soldiers or German soldiers? Because most of the soldiers in the Wehrmacht were not Nazis. They were soldiers, but not Nazis. So if the question is, what about people praying for German soldiers during the war? Well, I think a lot would depend on the kind of prayers made. A very hard argument to make, however, during the middle of a war. Good question, Harvey. See you all tomorrow. Got to say goodbye to the president. Let's go, Brandon.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM. And 104.3
The man
HD3.
suspected of making the bomb that blew up Pan Am Flight 103 as it flew over Lockerbie, Scotland 34 years ago is now in U.S. custody. Republican Congressman Greg Steube of Florida gives his reaction to the arrest on Fox News Live.
Americans are still fighting strong after all those years, and we're going to tell our enemies that we're going to hold you to justice. Even if you commit terrorism in 1988, we're going to come back and make sure that justice has been served.
The suspect is a Libyan intelligence official. The attack killed 259 people in the air and 11 on the ground. 190 Americans were killed in the bombing. 35 of them were Syracuse University students. Karen Bass was sworn in as mayor of Los Angeles at the city's Microsoft Theater Sunday. The former Democratic congresswoman addressed the immediate need for a state of emergency on homelessness in her inauguration speech.
If we are going to bring Angelenos inside and move our city in a new direction, we must have a single strategy to unite our city and county and engage the state, the federal government, the private sector, and every other stakeholder.
Bass also said she has plans to build housing in every part of Los Angeles. Congress has until the end of the week to prevent a government shutdown.
Congressional negotiators are said to still be far apart on top-line numbers for defense and non-defense spending, with a funding deadline expiring Friday night. Lawmakers from both parties are still hopeful of reaching an agreement on an omnibus, a package of spending bills funding the federal government through the fiscal year. But as time runs short, a short-term option may be needed, extending current funding for a few more days, weeks, or even months, something Pentagon leaders are warning against.
That's Fox's Jared Halpern in Washington. America is listening to Fox News.
From the Fox News Podcasts Network, the Fox News Rundown, a contrast of perspectives you won't hear anywhere else. Your daily dose of news twice a day, going far beyond the headlines, tapping into the massive reporting resources of Fox News to provide a full picture of the news of the day.
I'm Dana Perino.
I'm Brett Baer.
I'm Maria Bartiromo.
I'm Brian Kilmeade, and this is the Fox News Rundown.
Subscribe and listen now